We're about to die, aren't we?
Like 50-50.
Bienvenue, Magic players! Wait, what?
What happened? You blew us up, our sparks ignited, and now we're here.
Hey man, you're finally awake. I wanted to look at your trade binder.
Will? What are you doing here? Did you change my shirt?
Oh, don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, where are we? And why are we in widescreen?
Yeah, we're in exile, but we'll be fine just as long as we have suspend.
Have suspend? What are you talking about?
He's talking about that thing you get in high school.
No, not that kind of suspend. This kind. Anytime you can cast a sorcery, you can pay the suspended cost to exile it with time counters on it. You remove a time counter on it for each of your upkeeps. Once the final one is removed, you then cast the spell.
Okay, so hypothetically, what if we didn't have suspend?
You could always try cascading. You're short, so you'll probably have a low mana cost. Exile the cards from the top of your library until you remove a non-land card that costs less. And since nothing in the deck is less than free, you always hit the suspended card.
Oh, just like the Rhino decks in Mod. Really? A short joke? Really?
They're the gift that keeps on giving.
The two best cards with Cascade to get out these rhinos are Shardless Agent and Violent Outburst, especially Violent Outburst, because you can play that on your opponent's turn and hold up a Force of Negation in case they have a counter.
Seems like a really good shell for a modern deck, but what are you supposed to do before turn 3? How are you going to protect yourself with a bunch of 3-drops?
We have Bone Crusher Giant, Brazen Borrower, Fire Nice, Dead and Gone, Fury, and Archmage Charm.
Don't forget about Force of Negation and the Channel Lands.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. What if your opponent has like Flusterstorm or Teferi Time Rattler?
Then you're fucked.
Oh, okay.
See you later.
Okay, well I doubt we can Cascade out here. Let's just try Planeswalkers. Planeswalkers, right?
Hey, there's one more deck we have to talk about.
What other Cascade? Oh, right.
That's right, Living End, one of the best graveyard decks ever made.
This deck is almost entirely creatures with cycling, so you just cycle them until you hit a Cascade card, then you Cascade into Living End, and all your creatures come out while all of your opponent's creatures go to the graveyard.
The way to play this deck is to abuse your mulligans, because you don't want your Living Ends in your opening hand. The only thing they're useful for is Evoke Fodder, so you gotta mulligan them to the bottom. The only card you need to win is a card with Cascade, so just mulligan to get one of those in your opening hand, but don't go lower than 5. If you can't get it in your opening hand, you still have plenty of cards with cycling, and it's a good thing that's the whole point of the deck.
But the most important part of picking your opening hand is that you need to guarantee that you will have 3 lands on turn 3 in order to cast a Cascade spell. Yes, there's a good chance that you'll draw into enough lands from all your cycling, but as many of you know, Lady Luck is fickle, and at times cruel. So pre-Lord of the Rings, you'd run 20-ish lands when playing this deck, but that means sometimes you might draw into lands when you're cycling, and too much land spoils the hand. Originally, you would try to mitigate this issue with fetch lands that would remove the lands from the deck, but fetch lands are 1 for 1. Fetch land for fetchable land, meaning you're running a land to thin your deck of lands. And lands can only be played once per turn, meaning they can still get stuck in your hand. But if you were paying attention, I specifically mentioned pre-Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings gave us Oliphant and Generous End. Now we've had creatures with land cycling before, but this cycle has the unique quality of only costing 1 generic mana to do it, a trait shared only with Ash Barons, but unlike it, they can search for any land that has a land type they search for, meaning they can grab shock lands to fix your mana, and get past Blood Moon. They're similar to tap lands because you don't get access to the increase of mana until the very next turn. But they also thin your library, so I guess they're like tap fetches, like the slow fetches, you know, in those commander decks? So you can effectively take out a couple fetch lands to run these. And by doing so, the exchange goes from land for land to cycling a creature for land, which is what you want to do. Therefore, you can get away with running less fetch lands to find the same amount of fetchable lands, allowing you to fix your mana, thin your deck, and put a creature into your graveyard all with a single card that you basically run 2 playsets of. But they can be picked out of your hand thanks to Grief, because that's kind of everywhere at this point.
But what if you're going up against this kind of deck? Let's say you're on the play. You could always play a Teferi Time Rattler to stop them, but they could be holding a Mystical Dispute or a Forced Negation or even a Fury. It's a completely different ballgame when you're on the draw. You can always try a Leyline or a Rest in Peace or a Relic or a Lantern, but they have Wear and Tear and Brazen Borrower. You could always try a counterspell of your own, but they have Grief. Not even Containment Priest will work because it itself will get sacrificed to the Living End, so you gotta get it into your graveyard somehow. Don't get me wrong, all these cards still work against the deck, but the deck has just as many answers for them as well as copious amounts of card draw, which is why it can be so consistent. The best strategy against this deck is to be lucky. This deck can and will fall apart if it goes second with sideboards out, My advice is to mulligan just as aggressively as them, so that way you can get at least 2 cards to stop the combo in your opening hand.
Alright, now let's planeswalk out of here. Oh hey, it worked! Oh no, it worked!
We're doomed.